and then we're gonna wait a second, and then hopefully we're gonna be live.
All right.
Okay. So
You just say when.
yeah, I think we're live, but there's a bit of delay on the stream, so seemed to work. If you
All right.
okay, so who are you?
Well, hi. My name is Sylvester Hansen. I am an indie developer from Denmark. Um, I am currently working on a video game called The Chain Broke, which is a stealth puzzle game that I'm hoping we're going to talk a bit more about in a second.
Definitely, yes.
Um, I think my biggest asset is that I've been in this industry for, like, on the fringes of the industry for almost 5 years now.
Mhm.
And this game that I'm working on currently is then my first commercial release.
Okay, so I'm gonna introduce myself as well real quick because we're probably gonna upload this to both channels. So
Sure.
I'm Jonas, and I'm also currently working my first game, and I'm a complete noob, a complete starter in the indie scene. I've been making games for a very long time, but I'm just starting to get serious about it, I guess. And I don't have that much experience, that much development experience, but I'm trying my very hardest to build a cool game and a cool YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel where I document the entire process of making a game. And yeah, if you're interested in that, have a look. So
Um, yeah, just
yeah,
just real quick, telling you about I have a YouTube channel as well, not
yes,
surprisingly, in which I document my development as well, but I also give some tips and tricks for aspiring game developers. All right.
awesome. We already have 3 guys in the stream.
Yeah,
Oh no, 2 guys. Marlon and Goat Pixels, who's always here. Welcome. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so could you just tell me a bit about your game? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, sure. So my game's a very simplistic strategy game, and by simplistic I mean very simplistic. You just have to use the mouse and 2 buttons, the left mouse button and the right mouse button. You can't control your units. There's no resource management. There are no buildings. Your units just move around randomly, more or less, and you can either turn them into eggs with 1 mouse button. That means they're gonna turn into an egg. They're vulnerable for a certain amount of time, and then they split into 2 creatures. So that's how you create new units. And then the way you attack with your units is that you make them explode with the other mouse button. So one mouse button is for duplicating them and getting more units, and 1 mouse button is for detonating them and dealing damage.
All right. Um, sure. What was your inspiration to make this game?
Actually, I made a tutorial on my German YouTube channel a while ago, and I just wanted to make a short experimental game, and I did things that were easy to do. So I just created something that was easy to create, and then suddenly I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. I haven't seen that before. That plays kind of well. So that's why I want to turn it into a full game, I think. Into a complete Steam release.
Did you test it out? Did you get a test audience? Did they like it?
No, it was really just based on my personal experience. Because I play a lot of RTS games and I have never seen something like that before. A lot of casual RTS games. I think there's a niche I can get into with this game because it's so simple. It's more or less the simplest strategy game I've ever seen. That might not be entirely true, but I just out of my mind I cannot come up with anything that's simpler.
Is there a lot of depth to the game?
I'm not sure yet, honestly. So far, there is quite a bit of depth. You can do quite a bit of different things. But it will depend a lot on the level design and on the rest of the features. So I think just the mechanics themselves provide quite a bit of depth, but the rest will have to come from the level design, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. And When do you expect to be finished with the game?
I mean, it will take pretty much as long as it takes. I'm not under any kind of time pressure here, so I just want to release a good game, and as soon as the game is good enough, and as soon as I have enough attention for my game that I feel comfortable releasing it, I will release it. And I'm planning to do that in about 1 year, maybe in 2 years, something like that. So I'm 6 weeks into development now, and I'm just trying to create a vertical slice, more or less. So just a couple of levels, but really polished, so you can get a good feel if this works or not. Maybe it doesn't work. No, then I'll just scrap it and start another project. But yeah, we'll see. So
Sure.
maybe you can tell us a little more about your game. Your game's called The Chain Broke.
Yeah.
What is your game all about?
So I'm just gonna screen share while I do this because I think that
Okay.
might be more fun, so you can actually see the game.
Okay, I'll just go to this screen then, so people can see your screen now. Your full screen now.
Fantastic, and it's just there we are. So in the Chain Broke, you play as this little girl. She's named.
We cannot see anything yet.
Oh, you can't see anything yet.
Nope.
You just say when then.
Okay. Did you press the button? Are you sure you pressed the button?
I'm pretty sure. Can you see me? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, now we can see it.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Technical difficulties are always the best.
So the first thing we can see here is that you're developing your game in Unity.
Yeah, yeah. I've been developing this game for almost a year now, just over a year now. And it actually came into fruition when another project I'd been working on for a while sort of fell through. And when that game fell through, I've been working on a game with a couple of friends of mine. And when that fell through, I was sitting there with an AI on my hands, the very first AI I'd ever programmed. And I realized I actually might have something interesting there. So we've been developing a game that had a lot of depth outside of just the AI. And I realized there might be enough in the AI alone.
Okay. So which AI are you talking about? Can we see that?
In this case, I'm not talking any narrative AI. I'm talking the actual AI.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
individual elements within the game.
The enemy AI.
The enemy AI.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing now is the first couple of levels of the game. So you play as this little girl called 3CS, who wakes up in a room full of bottled people. And essentially what you have to do is figure out what exactly happened to the human race. And on the way there, I can see if I can give you a quick glimpse of the AI.
That would be cool.
You meet robots, and there's no combat mechanic. There's no way of actually attacking the robots. The best thing you can do is run. You can't even really hide as such. You can run around corners, and that's going to hide you from their line of vision. But you can't actually like crawl or crouch under something. So here we have one of the robots. You can see it's wearing a mask that I intentionally designed to be, uncanny valley, uncomfortable.
Okay, it has this weird mask, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
if I
kinda
run into
scary.
its field of vision right now, it's going to start shooting syringes at me. And then it's going to look around for a second. And if it doesn't find me again, which it did, it's going to go back to its starting position. You see here it's hit me, so that's just syringes being tossed at my face.
Okay, nice.
And again, this particular AI with just it following me and then looking around, it was something I had when the other project fell through. And I realized there might be enough of a video game in that. So I started developing a story around the AI. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen now because my computer is going shit.
So you're definitely developing a story-driven game?
Yeah,
So-
it's very much a narrative game.
Yeah. So it's not really about the AI, but about the narrative.
Yeah.
Because
What happened
I
was,
I also think from what I've seen so far, the AI is not exactly the most interesting part about this. It's
I would say, I mean,
relatively basic. I mean, just following you.
it,
I think I've seen that in a couple of games, but the way your environment looks is definitely more interesting to me. Those yellow highlights you had in that scene, and all the things that were on the wall. I'm definitely intrigued to find more about that. Yeah.
one of the well, my background is in design. And one of the things I realized relatively quickly when I started developing video games is I'm never going to be a great programmer. I mean, I like programming and it's fun, but I'm never going to be the one to develop something that's truly original on that side. But where I do stand relatively strongly is in design and writing.
Yeah.
So when I had this game that I tested it out about a month after, like, I created a very quick horizontal slice of the game in about a month to try and test it out and see how much time I could get people to actually spend with this particular game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just made some very quick level design. It was all made in with standard assets, and nothing was great. But people ended up spending 45 minutes with just this AI
Okay.
and very little else.
Okay.
And that was when I realized that there might be a full game here if
Okay.
I added in
Yeah.
a little bit of narration and a few more like subtle mechanics. There might be enough in just the central AI for like a full game.
So you went the smarter route and actually let people play your game before you started developing it.
Yeah, I
That's
mean
probably a good idea.
it's always great to get people's feedback, but it's also very scary to do that because people
Yeah.
online just do not care what it takes to actually make a video game.
Yeah. Good Pixels just gave me some feedback on my game as well, I think. I think that was on my game, or was it Sylvester's game? I like this game concept, but when you want to earn some money with your game, you actually need to put in more variety. I think that was for my game. But
Oh,
if you
well,
like, if you like to ask us any questions on in the chat, feel free to do so. We are probably happy to answer them. Okay, sorry.
I,
What?
I was just gonna say, in terms of variety,
Yeah.
you're 6 weeks in, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Um, I think really when it comes to variety, if you're planning on a longer run with a game like this, I think if the central mechanic is good, just iterating on that is gonna provide the variety you're looking for. So I don't think that's something you need to worry too
Yeah.
much about if you're confident in your central mechanic.
I'm relatively confident in the central mechanic, but it also cannot stay the way it is right now. I can definitely see that. So we'll have to add something. I just think I don't really feel like I want to add anything more to the controls because I like that the control scheme is that simple. And I like that you only have one kind of unit and there are just two actions you can do with that unit. So I'd like to keep it simple in that way, but I'd like to add a ton of different enemies and a ton of different objects you can interact with. And hopefully we'll get some cool gameplay and some cool mechanics this way. So
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. And also, I would encourage you to try out your game as quickly as you can.
yeah, definitely. I'll have to. I'm always saying I'll release a version that my viewers can play, but then I don't do it because I think I need to add this before I give it to them. No, maybe I need to add this, and then I just
There's a
don't do it.
saying that perfectionism is the enemy of development, or
Yeah.
perfectionism is the enemy of creative work. I think eventually you have to weigh one against the other. Which is more important, that you get the feedback so you can actually make sure that you're developing something your player base wants, or that it gets to exactly where you want it to go?
Mm, that makes
But
sense.
So just for my viewer base, what is your background? Where do you come from?
My background is I'm basically just got out of school and now I'm studying game design in Berlin. And yeah, we'll see. I'll what's next? Maybe I'll continue studying there. Supposed I'll just do my own thing. I don't really know yet. We'll see. Yeah.
So is it a school for game design, or is game design just
Yeah,
to focus on?
it's a university, Hochschule. I don't know the English word for that.
I don't think there is one, but
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay. And actually, it's really cool there. I really enjoy it because you have a lot of projects, a lot of game projects in small teams, and you can develop pretty much whatever you want. There are some constraints, but it's really awesome. So I definitely want to go back there just for the project, and after that we'll see. Yeah. So
Yep,
do,
sorry,
do,
you
do you
saying?
have any long-term plans for the future? Where are you headed with your game development and with your YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is more of a see where it goes sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to keep developing, keep making videos on the YouTube channel, just because I think I have something to say that I don't think a lot of other channels are actually putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
As for the game, originally I thought I was going to be able to release it in August of this year, and I still think a version is going to be released around then. But as for it's actually coming out on Steam, that's probably going to have to wait until January of next year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very, I won't call it underhanded, but it's definitely a calculated decision on my part. No good games really come out in January. So if I put my game out in January, there's a slim chance that I might be able to get a little bit of attention from some of the bigger journalistic sources in our industry, GameSpot, IGN, those sorts of places.
Okay. Little interruption because I have to change the caption of the stream. It was still set to Jonas' first stream, but that's not true. Let's change it to Game Dev Talk with Sylvester Hansen. How do you write your surname? Doesn't really matter. We'll fix it later. Okay.
That's fine.
So yeah. Sorry. Where were we? When will you release the game? In one year or how long?
Yeah, just under a year.
Okay.
I'm giving myself a lot of time
Yeah.
between
I think
beta
a year is
and
not even
release.
all that much, honestly.
Hmm?
A year is not even all that much. A year passes really quickly.
A year passes super quickly, especially when it comes to game dev, because there are just so many things that you have to take care of, and a lot of it I've never tried before. I've never actually put something out on Steam. I don't know what the process is there. I'm gonna have to make a company.
Yeah.
That's also new to
Same.
me. Pay taxes.
Mm,
There's just a whole host of things that I've never actually done before. So I'm giving myself what I consider to be ample time right now, but there's a good chance that when time comes and I actually have to put the game out, I'll be panicked because I didn't give myself enough time.
I think developing your game is just a really small portion of all the work you need to do. Maybe not a small portion, but
It's definite.
maybe 50%. I
A lot of
mean,
it-
now that I'm doing YouTube, it feels more like 25% or something like that.
I mean, a lot of it is. I also only started doing the YouTube videos after a year of development on my game, and it really came at a time when I started to realize that nobody knew about my game at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you need some way of capturing an audience and letting people know,
Yeah.
what exactly is happening on your project.
Actually, last time we talked, you had a really cool tip for me, and that was Newgrounds.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you want some good feedback on your games, I would consider newgrounds.com. It's actually it gets a really bad rep because a lot of people think that this is where like teenagers go to make really crappy Flash-based YouTube videos
Mm-hmm.
or animations. And yes, that is partially true.
Mm-hmm.
But what's great about Newgrounds is you have almost a guaranteed audience of at least 1,500 or so.
Yeah,
And
that's probably also a little bit because there's so much crappy stuff, and if you post something good, then you really stand out.
yeah,
Or
yeah, I think so. I've managed to get a feature there a bunch of times
mm-hmm.
where they feature it on the front page, and you get, you know, that puts you from like 1,500, 4,000 ish up to, I think my biggest success is around 30,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to sort of, then you get a different set of problems. One is getting feedback. I don't know if I told you this. My favorite bit of feedback I ever got on any game was somebody wrote about a different game I'd made. I think the quote was, "If you just finished reading an entire phone book, then this should be fun."
Oh,
Um,
that's brutal.
it is, it is. But what is great about, I mean, if you're gonna be a dick, at least make me laugh.
Yeah, sure.
Which this person did. Some people are just spitting bile, but for the most part, Newgrounds is a great place to test out any given idea.
Yeah.
Um, and you get a lot of feedback, and some of it is going to be brutal, but it's a good way of getting yourself accustomed to it. One of the hardest things to do is to not respond to feedback because you want to
Mm-hmm.
you want to
You would want to defend yourself, yeah.
yeah, you want to
Yeah.
defend yourself,
Yeah.
but you have to sort of accept,
Yeah,
you
just
know
have to
what?
listen.
Yeah, it's not about me.
Yeah, no.
Um, and almost everybody has something valid to say. Almost everybody. There are some people who are just in it to troll you, but that it's also an extinction. It's a way to get to learn how to deal with a lot of people.
Okay, I think Good Pixel asked a question about your game, which
Yeah,
is does it have some kind of sound? What about the sound?
actually, I have a really interesting sound situation right now. So currently, I'm still working with the placeholder sound
Mm-hmm.
that I was working with like way back in January of last year. But I just got into contact with a guy from Sweden who is going to be making a concert around my game.
Yeah, we've talked about that. That's really crazy.
It's an odd situation. So he's studying for his master's degree, which is why he's able to do it. I don't. He's not just doing it out of the goodness of his heart. And the situation is as follows, the way that I understand it. He wants somebody from the audience to come onto the stage and play the video game, which will then be projected behind an orchestra of some of his friends, not an actual paid orchestra. And then he's going to direct them in tune to what's being played.
Mm.
So it's going to be a live performance
So
where he's going to direct them as it's being played.
yeah.
I don't quite know how
So
it's
the
going to work.
musicians have to react in real time to whatever's happening in your game. That's
Exactly.
more or less it. Yeah.
And they won't have any like idea what's going to happen because it's going to be in real time. And I'm having a discussion with him about just how aggressive a shift in sound is going to be from when you get captured to when you're just sort of playing the game and being stealthy. And I want it to be very, very aggressive. And he's having a bit of an issue figuring out so how aggressive and all of that.
Yeah. But actually, if you're interested in the sound, Sylvester has a video about this on his channel. So
Oh, yeah.
I'll link his channel somewhere below this video once I have time to do that. Or you can just type his name in the search and find it as well.
Myself and my composer is very interested in any sort of feedback.
Yeah. I'm as well, but I haven't given you my game yet, so you that makes it a little difficult for anybody to give me good feedback.
I'm telling you, Newgrounds.
Yeah, I'll try that as soon as I implement that one more feature. Maybe we should get into the questions we prepared.
Yeah.
We prepared a couple of very interesting questions. And my first one for you is what do you think about the current state of AI and where do you think all of this is headed? Are people maybe a bit too worried, or where's it going?
Personally, I think...
Did I give the context for your game? Because your game is about AI, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Also the narrative is about AI.
The overarching story is all around AI. It's you're being followed around. I'm not going to give too much away, but you're being followed around these robots that clearly are an AI by themselves, and you have to sort of avoid them, and they are the only type of enemy. So every enemy that's in my game is going to be some version of an artificial intelligence. And there's an overarching story in my game about artificial intelligence.
Okay.
I'm not that worried about AI. I know that Stephen Hawking and a lot of people are spelling out doom and gloom when it comes to artificial intelligence. In fact, my video game is currently being considered as sort of the basis for a haunted house. That I can talk a bit more about that project in a second.
Yeah.
But personally, I'm not that worried, mostly because we human beings are the ones who are going to be developing the AI.
Yeah.
We're going to be focusing on how exactly it's going to think, how it's going to approach problem solving.
Yeah, but I think the problem with machine learning and neural networks is that is exactly not the case. That you basically just don't know if you're familiar with how neural networks work.
Not really. But we're still going to be the one who are going to implement the systems that is going to help it to teach itself. I mean, at the end
sure,
of the day,
you're still the one that teaches us what is good and what is bad. So, but sometimes that can have some unwanted results. And also, I don't just mean I don't think AI will take over the world or anything like that. I don't think that's very likely, but it's really surprising how smart AI is getting at the moment, and there might be some different problems. For example, what if somebody writes an AI that can develop video games better than we? What are we going to do then? And actually, I don't know if you have heard about that website. You can look it up now if you want. It's called deepart.io. Deepart, yeah.
I-O.
It's actually a neural network, so an AI that is all about drawing. So the AI can draw. You just give it a photo and tell it in which style you want the photo to be drawn, and it just draws the photo in that exact same style. I mean, it's absolutely crazy and mind-blowing.
I've seen these around.
Yeah.
Well,
and there are more and more things like that are popping up on the internet. So I'm really interested to see where all of this is headed. I mean,
again, at the end of the day, I'm not super worried.
No.
Insofar as we remain in control of the AI. So any dystopian future, I think there are a lot of actually really interesting games that are being developed around the idea of artificial intelligence. Mine one, at least I think so. But Soma, if you know that game, has a really interesting take on AI and what AI might, where it might go. I think the most recent season of Black Mirror is also sort of a rumination on what AI exactly is.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, and I haven't played Soma, but
I can encourage.
Okay.
I think we're definitely moving towards a time when AI is going to be just a much bigger part of our lives, something we have to get used to. But I
Definitely.
don't think that it's something we have to be particularly scared of. I think
Maybe not
we're
scared,
putting in
but a little careful, maybe. Maybe that's the correct
careful
word.
is maybe. I think we're putting in. I'm hoping at least that the people making the actual AI and not my little trial version here are being careful about what they're implementing. And if they are worried at all, they have such a huge backlog of what they called science fiction novels to draw from as to worst case scenarios.
Mm.
So I think there's a lot to be said negatively, but I think I think the negative is overtaking the positive in the conversation of
Yeah.
AI, and
Yeah, there are a
unfortunately,
lot
I'm
of
not
positive
helping.
possibilities.
Another
Yeah.
My game is another negative voice in that conversation.
I think especially in games there are tons of cool stuff you can do with AI if you use it correctly.
Definitely,
Would be so
definitely.
cool to have an AI design levels in real time or stuff like that that fits exactly to your skill set.
I think one of the things that at least we haven't seen much when it comes to artificial intelligence yet is anything narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Procedurally
that's because it's
generated.
really hard, I guess.
What do you
Yeah,
say?
it's really hard, I guess, to write an AI that generates good narrative. That's
Yeah,
why we haven't seen it. But I'm very curious to see that. It'll come earlier or later. We'll see
yeah.
something like that.
Eventually, it'll show up.
Yeah,
Um,
very curious to see that.
so, on piggybacking on that question, how do you feel about the current development in real-time strategy?
Yeah, good question. There are not a lot of real-time strategy games at the moment. There are a couple ones. Um, we talked about it a little bit before the stream started. They kind of started to disappear when the whole MOBA thing started. And also, I think StarCraft land grabbed a lot. So all of the hardcore RTS players that want to play really complicated RTS games, most of them, I think, are at StarCraft or play StarCraft. And also, yeah, there are a couple of good strategy games out there, but I think it's going more and more into. It's hard to tell. Honestly, I don't really want to talk about something I don't know all that much about.
Sure.
I'm just making estimations here. I think there are there's people value their time a lot, and there are a lot of casual strategy games nowadays. So this hardcore strategy experience, there are a lot easier ways to get that nowadays than playing really complicated strategy games. Maybe earlier this was the only way to get that kind of experience a couple of years ago, but nowadays you have really simplistic games on smartphones that give you an awesome RTS experience and are way easier to get into something. There are a lot of really good tower defense games and also stuff like Clash Royale, where you also just play multiplayer on your smartphone. And I guess that sort of replaced hardcore RTS games for a lot of people because it's still RTS, but it's a lot easier. And then there was also an indie game recently called Tooth and Tail. Don't know if you heard about that. Which is
Tooth
also
and tail.
Tooth and Tail, yeah. It's also a very simplistic strategy game. Actually, I haven't played it, but it looks really cool, and I want to try it. It's also a really simple strategy game. It has buildings and units and all that good stuff, base building, but you really just have. It's really simple, and you don't even control your units like in a normal strategy games, but you have one leader character that you control either with the controller or with your keyboard, and your units follow you around, so you basically just play one character instead of multiple ones, and your entire army just follows you. So that's a really cool idea as well to execute that.
It looks fun.
Yeah,
I can't tell if it's pixel art or
I think it's pixel art.
Yeah, it sort of looks like it.
I'm not sure. I don't know how it looks.
Pixel art is sort of the. I feel like every indie game developer has made a pixel art game. Like at some point, I have.
I think I haven't.
Oh, you still have that little thing to make eventually.
Depends on if you count all the little prototypes I made, because then I probably made some pixel art, but I never really was that much into pixel art, to be honest.
I mean, I came of age or came into video games when they started being 3D. So I've always been more into 3D than I have pixel art or 2D games almost in general. Um, but what's interesting is now that we're seeing sort of a shift in the industry. I'm getting much more into 2D and pixel arty games because they provide me with experiences that I don't feel like the bigger guys are really giving at the moment.
Yeah. That's really cool about indie development, that they can focus on really small niche games and really specific needs.
I also think, we've gotten to a point in the industry where some of the bigger companies seem to be focusing more on the bottom line, meaning money, than I think they do artistic merit within their games. I'm sure that certainly there is artistic merit in their games, but we're seeing a lot of shifts away from narrative and single player experiences and into games that could eventually become something played in the esports space.
Yeah.
And that's what becomes, that's become sort of the norm.
Yeah. I think so too. The most AAA companies are focusing on multiplayer nowadays. But it's a logical decision. It's just an option we have now with modern technology to make games like this.
But I'd say it's a little bit of a shame because we're missing some of the experiences, and unfortunately, indie is a very volatile market.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult market to have any sort of security in.
As a developer or as a
Yeah.
customer?
As a developer, as a customer, you're great. You get a
Yeah,
lot of games,
of
but
course.
as a developer, it's very difficult to know that your game is going to sell well, if at all.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we have to generate. We have to do everything ourselves, from promotion over programming to art to sound, like, because we can't really. At the beginning, you won't really be able to pay anybody to do that. And as somebody who's touched the space where investors are found, like I've had some investor meetings and tried that whole part of the industry.
Okay. For your game?
Not for this game. This game was specifically outside of an investor space because
Okay. For the
it's
previous
such,
project.
yeah, it was for a different project, but it's
Okay.
such a predatory market. It's not difficult to get an investor, I would say, but they sometimes take up to like 75% of the gross of any game, which means you're left after taxes, with at least after Danish taxes, with a measly like 7% of your entire development, which then has to go towards development of your next game. So a game has to sell like aggressively well
Yeah.
in order for you to continue in the industry.
It's really hard. And
And you just can't, with the first game, you can't expect that type of development, that type of profit.
and one thing that's also just making it harder and harder is digital distribution. I mean, in some sort, it makes it easier, but the problem with it is that you're competing with everybody who ever made a game ever. So there are so many games out there, and you can get every single one of them. And maybe some random dude made a cool stealth game 5 years ago and is selling it for $2 now on Steam, and you have to compete with that. So that doesn't make it any easier.
And it always, I mean, you have to be okay with the fact that what you're making might not end up being seen by all that many people.
Yeah, definitely. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
And this, I mean,
Yeah.
it just means that you have to love what you do because you're not going to be able to do it for the money of it.
Yeah.
In my case, I consider it a bit closer to art what I do. Not that I would ever call myself an artist, but what I do is a bit closer to art in execution because I'm doing this because I love it and because it makes me feel good and it gives me an artistic outlet.
Mhm.
But I'm not doing it because I think there's going to be a buttload of cash in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've the few people I know who actually work in the games industry, they're being underpaid for the most part, and they tend to become very um, angry at the video game industry and at games. And I still want to enjoy games while making them.
Okay. Actually, just for the people in stream who just joined, we're currently talking about the current state of the games industry. We are not no experts on that, but we're gonna discuss it anyways.
It's very much around, personal experience, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I think for the most part, I think we're going to see a decline in video games. I think we're going to see more indies like my own that are going to push a different agenda. And we're already seeing some of those. I just finished playing Night in the Woods, which is made by a three-person team in, I believe, San Francisco or somewhere in California. And that's a it's a really great game, but it's also a game that you know for a fact that no big developer would ever invest in because there just isn't much in the way of a revenue stream there.
Yeah, but from a customer perspective, it has never been better. There are so many games, and they're only getting cheaper. So
exactly.
Actually, it's a really positive thing. Everybody can make games nowadays. It's becoming really easy. If you want to make a game, you can do it.
It's becoming harder if you want to live by making.
Yeah, that's becoming harder. Exactly. Yeah.
Where you want to make your living, and I think as you talked about with RTSs, there are not industries, but genres that are sort of falling by the wayside. Not because they're necessarily bad or nobody plays them, but simply because they can't make the money that a Battlefield, whichever, or whatever number of what are they called? Assassin's Creed were on.
I think for the AAA industry, that's definitely true. And I mean, it's a shame that we're not going to get any AAA 3D puzzle games anymore, any AAA. Yeah, I guess it's not true. There are AAA stealth games and all that sort of stuff, but they are go in a very specific direction with a lot of focus on action-oriented gameplay.
I think AAA
there's not that much variety.
AAA has gotten into a point where they have sort of put themselves in a precarious position because they now more or less they've seen one video game type be super popular, and that's really the only type of game they seem to make anymore. I think somebody made there's actually a really good video about this. Somebody did a breakdown of the 2017 E3 conference, and out of the many games that were discussed there, not discussed, but announced, only like 7% of those were non-violent. The rest had some sort of combat, and oftentimes a very aggressive sort of combat.
Yeah.
If we look at the games released for the PlayStation 1 at a time when what are they called? JRPGs were big and adventure games were big. there was such a wide variety of experiences that you could have within the gaming space. But
Yeah,
currently,
but I think especially now that's better than ever with all the indies out there. I just didn't finish my last thought there
oh,
correctly.
sorry.
You're completely right that we cannot get all that varied experiences in the AAA industry, but I think in the indie space, there's more variety than ever probably, because everybody's trying to find his own niche. Or
I think you're right. I think the big problem with the indie space in general is that we're not seeing the mainstream gamer really going indie. Like it's great for us, the community of us that know about indie games and pay mind to indies.
yeah, but I know a lot of, or at least I have a couple of friends who really enjoy those really big AAA games like Assassin's Creed, and they wouldn't enjoy indie games. So they know they exist, but they like what the big studios are producing, and I think it makes sense. They are producing those games because there are people who actually want to play them. So
I think it's good. The only thing I would wish that the AAA industry would do a bit more is give us variety. You know, we're not really seeing many AAA RTSs or AAA puzzle games, or we're really only seeing the one type of AAA, which is the action adventure game, as it were,
yeah,
um, in either first or third person. I wish that the AAA industry would take some chances and try out something different and interesting. But I also get why they don't. There's just not a lot of money in it.
yeah, definitely. They're just running businesses, and that's not necessarily something we should judge them for. I think it's very
It's complete.
normal.
I mean, I agree there. I think the good thing about indies is that as development has become cheaper to do, it's also allowed for us to see a lot more variety in a very specific spot in the
Mm,
industry. So we're now seeing some people out of either nostalgia or love for the
mm,
medium coming in and creating those experiences that the AAAs just aren't anymore.
yeah.
I just wish that with the marketing budgets that the AAAs have, I wish that they were giving the mainstream gamer more of an education in games than I feel like they're getting currently.
So do you think most mainstream gamers don't really get how many awesome indie games there are out there? Do you think they're just not aware of it, or do you think
I mean,
they?
for the most part, yeah. I
Mm,
always use my own brother as a test audience for my game.
mm,
I do this because he knows very little about the games industry, so he'll be brutally honest without knowing it. Like
okay,
he'll tell me things that really hurt, but he
okay,
doesn't
that's
know
awesome.
it's being
Yeah,
hurtful because he just doesn't get it. And it's usually a great way of quality controlling my own experiences, even if it's harsh at times.
yeah, that's awesome
And
if you have somebody like that. Yeah.
it's great. It's a great resource to have, even if he's sort of a douche at times. But he seemed he knows so little about games that he might be aware of one or two games that come out a year, and it's always going to be whatever is being promoted the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just invariably going to be the AAA space. That's what they have. They have the money to promote the way that we don't. I wish that either we're going to have more promotion for indie games, or that the AAA would diversify more.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't think either is going to be the
No,
case,
obviously not. I mean,
unfortunately.
it makes sense exactly the way it is, but
My
I see
guess
that it's
is
bothering you. Yeah.
my guess is that it's going that it's unsustainable. I don't think we're in a I don't think we're in a space right now in the games industry that it's really going to be able to sustain itself because the cost of making something at a AAA level keeps rising, and
Mm,
the demand for better and more impressive graphics keep rising.
mm,
And eventually, I think we're going to see some sort of a crash where the benefits of making something at that level of look is going to outweigh the outweigh the cost.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I can see that happening because the indie space is getting bigger and bigger. And honestly, sometimes you can't even really tell the difference between an indie game and a AAA game anymore. Some of them look really damn good.
We are seeing
And
some
yeah,
really good.
they'll have to find a way to justify their team size, and they'll have to stay ahead if they want
Yeah.
to stay relevant. Yeah, I guess. But I don't know
It's,
if I agree with you on the fact that mainstream gamers don't really know that there are so many indie games out there. I think they are aware of the fact. Maybe they don't really take the time to have a closer look which games are out there.
yeah.
And also a lot of the mainstream gamers I think are also still playing on console, and it's a little actually I don't have a console, so once again I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I think you're
I think
not getting exposed to indie games as much on console than on Steam. You see a lot of indie games when you log into Steam. I don't know how that is with consoles at the moment.
I actually think because I have two consoles. I have a PlayStation and then I have a Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And I am starting seeing a push towards indies on
Mm-hmm.
the Nintendo Switch. I think
That's
it's
awesome, yeah.
relatively inexpensive to develop for the system. Um, but they also have a bit of quality control. Like you can't just like throw something onto the Switch and just be like, call it a day.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
perfect. That's exactly what you
so I
want,
think
right?
we're seeing some of the better indies, some of the better representations of our market come onto the Switch. So I think the Switch might live through indies. I think indies are going to be some of the things that are going to. I think we're going to see a symbiotic relationship where the Switch is going to
Mm-hmm.
live by indies, and indies are going to live through way of the Switch.
Mm-hmm. That might be. Yeah, I've heard that a lot of indies had success on the Switch.
I played Night in the Woods on the Switch. It was really good.
Yeah, cool. It's cool that the Switch worked out so well. Maybe I should get one someday so I can play all of those juicy Nintendo games that I've never played. But they make really good games.
I really enjoyed the new Zelda, and I'm not a
Mm,
Zelda fanboy. You know, Final Fantasy was my JRPG when I grew up. But I really enjoyed myself with the new Zelda, so I can very
mm.
much recommend.
The new Mario also looks quite fun. So
I don't have much of a relationship with Mario, so
me neither, but it would be very interesting to try it.
it was okay. I wasn't as blown away by it as most
Mm,
people were.
mm.
I was entertained. It was a good game, but wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever.
Okay, but it's also not really your kind of game, or is it?
I tend to go with the more serious thing. I've tried making games that are a little bit lighter in tone, but they never do
Mm,
as well as when I'm being uber serious.
mm,
Um, and it's just one of those things that you have to accept about yourself that maybe I'm just not that funny. Maybe when I'm in my sweet spot when I'm doing something that's very
mm,
serious and very dark in tone.
mm. Yeah, I see.
Um, to move back into development, what are your worst and favorite parts of development?
Okay, so next question. My favorite part about development is usually the beginning because everything goes forward very quick. You make very quick progress. You just do a couple of hours of coding and a lot changes. And then the bigger your game gets, the more it slows down because it gets more and more exhausting to search through your entire code. And also, there are a lot of boring activities that pile up in the end, like coding the UI, the menu screens, and making sure it works on every PC with all of the different screen ratios and all that sort of stuff. Takes a lot of work, you don't see that much progress, and then it starts getting less fun. So I really like starting, but I don't like finishing. But unfortunately, you need to do both. And
I mean,
one part I also really like is the balancing, because I think it's absolutely fascinating that you can change an experience so much just by tweaking a couple of numbers. You're just changing the speed of something, just changing the HP of something, and suddenly you're playing a completely different game. That's really fascinating to me. Yeah.
I think I more or less agree with you. The beginning is definitely one of the more fun parts of any experience, because everything changes up so quickly, and you get a lot of really pertinent information early on to shape the entire experience. I'll say this is the first time with this game. It's the first time that I'm really getting into sort of the late stages of development, meaning specifically things like aspect ratio and sound mixing and and all of that. And this is also the most ambitious video game narrative I've ever taken on. I think one of the more annoying parts of a prolonged experience like this is all of the second guessing that comes into it.
Yeah, I know that.
Because you're looking at something for so long and it doesn't really change that much, you start second guessing every decision you've made.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And sometimes looking at something and changing it works for the better, but sometimes it really doesn't. And
sometimes you break it.
Yeah. And it's very difficult to tell when you're doing your project a favor or when you're being destructive towards your project. So I've come into the habit of talking to people on Facebook, like basically whomever is online when I'm implementing any type of change to the game. I will just hit somebody up and be like, do you have like a second to look at this logo I designed for some game thing? And I'm sure people are annoyed with me about it, but it helps me.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool part actually about my YouTube channel, because I have this really cool feedback loop where I just do something and I upload daily, so I instantly, or more or less instantly, see what people think about it, and that's really helpful just to get some feedback on your stuff. Because if you're just one person and the opinion of one person alone doesn't really tell you all that much if it works, if it doesn't work, I agree on that. So I get a lot of feedback, just not on the gameplay. Because
I consider, especially seeing as your experience is a bit more gameplay focused.
Yes, definitely.
It might be a good time to, because you already have a little bit of a build audience, so now might be a good time to have them play it and get some feedback on that part of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll release it this weekend.
I think that's a good idea. And I will be, please send a link my way. I'd
definitely
very much like to play it.
Yeah, cool.
Because I think the concept of a very, very simple RTS is actually really good. It's really, I think, just about does the core mechanic work, and how can you iterate on it?
I'm not really sure if it really feels like an RTS, honestly. I think it has some RTS elements because you're building units and you're destroying enemies, but you don't have any resource management in any building, so I don't know if people even feel like it plays like a traditional RTS. But
I don't know what else you could call it. A clicker?
Don't know. Yeah,
maybe
probably. I think it's probably still the best term to describe it. Yeah, Okay, but let's not get too sidetracked here.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next question.
Yeah, sure.
So one thing that I ask is, why should I play The Chain Broke, or why should people play it?
It's an interesting question insofar as I don't have like a super pitchy answer for that. Partly you should play it because it's the first game I've ever made. That's maybe a little bit of a narcissistic answer, but it's definitely the first time you're ever going to see my specific point of view in a video game. Partly you should play it because it has a really interesting narrative that has something new to say about machine learning and how machines might think differently from a human being.
I think that's a good pitch. You should just start with that.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. Moving forward, that's how I'm going to sell it.
It has a strong narrative, and it has something interesting to say about AI and machine learning. I think that sounds intriguing, actually. At least for me, because I'm really into that stuff. And I think if you can definitely get an audience that way, because there are definitely people that are interested in AI and in machine learning. And if you can grab their attention, then good for you.
Yeah. I'm going to pitch it like that from now on. I'm sorry if I fully blanked out, but what is the name of your game?
Doesn't have a name yet, so you didn't blank out. We're currently deciding on a name on the channel, and we will vote on Saturday. There will be a video where people can vote on different names. I have 3 different ideas in mind, and yeah, we'll just see which one sounds the best.
You're not going to give us a piece on what those ideas are?
Yeah, I mean, I can try. Let me try to find the screenshot so I can show you. It's a little sneak peek, because the actual video is actually just coming out Saturday. It's a spoiler, but doesn't matter. Can I find the screenshots?
Oh, the big questions in life. Where is the screenshot?
Where are they? Actually, I can just tell you. Who cares about the screenshots? One name is Ovis, and the idea is that there are basically, whenever you create new enemies, new units, whenever you want to duplicate them, they turn into eggs, and those eggs kind of drag out on the sides and split into 2 parts. So for a moment, it looks like they're 2 eggs just connected by a thin line in between. And then creatures hatch out of those 2 eggs. So it's that's let's just call these eggs Ovis, and then we have 2 of those eggs right next to each other. So it's Ovis, obviously. And I think I looked that up in a Latin dictionary. I forgot the Latin word for egg, but it's something like that. So, and then we have a slight variation, which is Ovis Nova. It's a new one I came up with, and then the last one was the last one I don't remember.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's probably not a good sign if you can't remember the name of your own game.
I really like Ovis.
Yeah, I like it too.
I think that's cute. And it says something about, it's about your core gameplay, and it says something about your core gameplay. So I think, if I were to vote right now, that's probably the one I would vote for.
Yeah.
The Chain Broke is actually the very first thing that came to my mind when I was planning out the game. And originally, it was supposed to be the first line of dialogue in the game. But as I changed up the game, I started realizing, and I played around with a lot of different names for it, but I ended up realizing that it's more about systematic change, and sort of how the AI itself changes. So I kept the name, but for a while it was going to be called Tau, Tau. And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized that there are like a million games called
Yeah,
that.
that's a problem. So
So
one,
I ended up with the chain broke,
mm,
which there are no games called, at least on Steam.
that's cool. One thing I always do with my game names is I type them into Google and see how many results I get. The fewer, the better.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a bit of a issue with the chainbroke. If I think if somebody typed the chainbroke into Google, he wouldn't probably not see your landing page first. There would probably be some other things about chains and broken stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it's a really good name.
The only thing I figured out with the chain broke is on Twitter. I checked out if hashtag the chain broke was being used by anything,
Mm-hmm.
and the only place I found it was somebody had broken their toilet.
Okay.
The chain broke
Okay. Yeah.
in the toilet. But that was really the only other place I saw that being hashtagged.
Yeah. That's a good sign.
Um, I only have one question left, really, which is about your process.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you feel like your process is like?
Um,
Oh, we're
I
going
don't
into
really have.
question now.
I don't. Oh, I think I'm starting to lose my voice here.
No, that's fine.
I'll have to do some whispering because I streamed today in the morning as well. So
Okay.
let's see how long I can keep talking. But actually, my process is relatively simple. For this game, I started with the gameplay, so I tried to start with very abstract shapes and prototype the game this way without any graphics, without any specific setting or story in mind at all. So very gameplay. I get very gameplay focused approach, and then after that, I tried to figure out an art style. So I basically did that cool challenge where I created 4 different art styles for my games with 4 different settings and 4 different themes in 4 days. So one style each day, and then I just decided on the best one. And I think it has a lot of advantages to do the look of your game second and to do the mechanics first, because this way you don't get triggered in a certain direction and you can have the complete freedom, because if you're just moving abstract shapes around the screen, you can do pretty much whatever you want with them. And then as soon as you attach a theme to it, you have very specific limitations. As soon as I say this is a fantasy game about this and that, then I suddenly have to think about, okay, what can knights do or what can dragons do? And I just like having that freedom to do with my game pieces whatever I want. So I start with the gameplay. But I don't have an established workflow yet, because this really my first game where I'm really getting serious. And other than that, my workflow has always been different for every game I've made. So I haven't really created any game in the same way. But I often tend to start with the mechanics, because I'm a very mechanics and gameplay focused dude. Yeah.
I think for me, I actually agree with you. Video games are meant to be played, so um, this is actually the first game that I went with a vertical or horizontal slice relative to a vertical one.
Ah, okay.
So I made almost a full version of the game in a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, and then once I had that tested out and knew that there was some level of quality there, I went on and started doing the visuals and
Mm-hmm.
story for it. And actually, there was an interesting point in my game. So originally, I had a very different light setup, and it looked different in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Until my brother again played it, and told me that it looked. Oh God, what was he called? He told me it looked like a game from the '80s, but not in a cool way. Which when you've been
Mm,
working on something for 4 months, that's like a dagger
mm,
to your heart. but he wasn't wrong.
So you redid the design at that point.
Yeah, I needed to do something different. For a long time, I was very occupied with the idea of doing my game for iOS and Android. But then I realized that's probably not a market that's super into narrative games to begin with.
Yeah, it's probably also not a device that you really want to play horror stealth on, because you can't really immerse yourself in that experience all that much on
Yeah,
a tiny screen.
But I tend to go from a mechanic standpoint first and make sure that my game is fun to play, and then I focus whatever story I have around the fun gameplay.
Okay, so even you're creating a story-driven game, you didn't create the story first?
I did not know. Actually,
Okay.
The way the story came about was I had an animation issue with the AI system that is in Unity, where it will rotate weirdly. So it'll do like it'll go up to a point, and then when it's rotating to go to the next point, it will rotate and move. So if you have a character, like a humanoid character, he'll sort of Michael Jackson moonwalk in place for a little bit until he's rotated.
Okay.
And that looked really, really weird. And I didn't know how to fix that issue with the Unity AI, and there wasn't really a quick fix for me. But I realized if I made the enemies a floating robot,
yeah,
then I wasn't going to have the issue.
Okay.
So I ended up with these floating robots, and then I simply had to figure out, okay, well, what is the story going to be about if the main villain or the main enemy is a floating robot?
Okay.
And then I sort of retroactively wrote a story from this idea of floating robots.
Okay, that's interesting. So more or less a happy accident.
For the most part, yeah. And I try whenever I start a game project to not lock myself down to any visual style or any, I usually either go with, I have a tool that I really want to work with, or I go with a mechanic that's really interesting to me. And then I try, and so usually a game idea for me will sound something like, it's going to be something with branching narrative, and it's probably going to have such and such style of animation.
Yeah.
And then that's the way I go about it.
But yeah, you still need to stay within your limitations. So I think you can't just be, I don't want to have any limitations on the art style whatsoever. You obviously have a lot of technical limitations.
And I mean, I think that's one of the things. Oftentimes, when you're doing something like this, turning a negative into a positive can be a good thing. Saying to yourself, okay, so I can't use this or that tool, or I won't have the opportunity to do such and such, means that you all of a sudden have a lot of opportunities. That means that, okay, I can't use, for my game, for instance, I can't use materials on my 3D objects all that much. But that means that I have to go very simplistic on everything. Everything needs to be minimalistic, because that's really the only thing I can achieve if my situation is such that I can't do...
Is that just because you don't want to texture all of your objects, or is there another reason?
It's partly because I don't want to texture all of my objects.
I mean, I can understand that. It's a ton of work. I wouldn't want to do that either.
It's a ton of work. It's also partly because I've done some texturing in the past, and it ended up taking so much time to be able to make something within the level of quality that I was looking for, that I wouldn't, if I had to make a game, a full video game with that level of work, it would end up taking me a good 5 years or something. And that's just, I have no interest in making those passion projects that take 5 years to make.
No, me neither. Because if you work for a project more than 2 years, then you're at the point where you have to start redoing everything you did in the beginning, because you're no longer happy with what you did, because you already
I mean, I can tell now that I've been working on this for just over a year, that I'm already at a point where I'm looking at things and being like, oh shit, I have to redo that. That does not look like some. And I mean, the way that I've been working on this game is also a little bit different than what I used to. For this game, I really did sort of the alpha beta type of development cycle where I have an alpha and it's done. And now I'm sort of working my way towards beta. But there's just such a huge difference between the gameplay experiences of the two that you end up sort of having to reconfigure some things to make to make the whole game just seem cohesive.
Yeah, cool. Maybe I can give you a few questions about consoles, which is just Nintendo or Sony.
Ooh, that's a rough question. I think it's very much about what you want. Currently, I'm more into Nintendo. Like I used to be a Sony fanboy, but I feel like the way that Nintendo has approached the Switch is really, really great for us indies, and I'm having a lot more fun with Nintendo. I've actually talked to some representatives from Nintendo about getting a developer's kit, and they seem very excited about smaller third-party developers more so than they are about sort of the bigger companies. Nintendo's they're definitely also taking risks. That's partly why I like them. The Labo, that whole cardboard situation. Have you seen those?
No.
Oh, I'm gonna send you a link after this. It's great. It's basically making your own controllers for the Nintendo Switch, but out of cardboard.
Oh.
And then it's like a piano that you can play.
For the Switch or for the PlayStation?
For the Switch.
For Switch, okay. Crazy.
And I mean, no matter what you think about that idea and whether or not it's gimmicky and dumb, it's still a great risk for them to take. You know, they're making something that's never been seen before, something that speaks to a completely different market than maybe the one would think of as standard video gamey. So they're definitely taking some weird risks.
I'll have to type Nintendo Labo in Google.
Yeah.
1 sec.
How
does it look? Oh, that looks really interesting.
It really is. And they're also.
Does it work? Can you play on these weird paper things? How does that work?
How it works? I honestly don't know. I think there are a lot of sensors in each of those individual. Can't remember what they're called. They're not called Joy-Cons, but something similar to that. That you then put into those cardboard things, and they will then sense movement. And there's some very rudimentary, not cameras, but something that senses like light and dark, and that kind of stuff in there.
Okay, there are sensors in the controller. Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's really
I really like this about Nintendo. They're willing to experiment. Yeah.
They very much are. I mean, I think it's gonna turn out great for them, but I mean, it didn't for the Nintendo Wii. So I mean, they're willing to take chances on a larger market in a way that I don't see Sony and Microsoft doing currently. But I could also be biased because I'm seeing a lot more indies making their way to successfully making their way to Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I mean from an indie perspective, it's probably Switch. Yeah. There are some indie games on PlayStation as well, of course.
I mean, a lot of indie games, but you never see them really being promoted by PlayStation. Whereas I can't say how this is going to change moving forward as more developers move on to the Switch, more of the bigger developers. But I can tell you that on PlayStation, the smaller games just don't get any space over the larger ones.
Yeah. But maybe that's also because the audience isn't really there. Maybe
That could
the
very well
people
be.
owning PlayStations are interested in Assassin's Creed and not necessarily in indie games.
That might be why you buy a PlayStation, for the added processing power.
Probably. Okay, I have one more question for you, which is how do you go about actually designing the graphics for your game? I think you talked a little bit about this. So you start with the gameplay, but then you have this prototype, you have the basics of your gameplay. Then what's next?
I mean, I will say, when it comes to visuality, I have a background in design. I have a master's in design from a design school here in Denmark, which definitely helps when I'm doing this sort of work, because I have a pretty good understanding of what's going to work and what isn't.
But where do you start? Do you just
I usually start with a very quick sketch. I wouldn't call it concept art, but that's ostensibly what it is. So I'll do a super quick sketch. I think I might be able to show something for the camera. So this is my notebook I'm rifling through right now. So I don't know if you can see it, but something along the lines of this.
Okay, I can see a house.
Um,
Is it a house?
Yeah. It's right there.
Yeah.
So I'll do something like that, something that takes me like at most 10 minutes.
Okay.
And what's really important to me is figuring out, so what am I doing and what is the vague idea?
Okay.
I actually use Pinterest a lot, of all social medias, because it has such a wealth of visual information.
I think
So
a lot of designers do that actually.
It's for women who want to look at wedding dresses, and then for designers.
Yeah.
And then I'll do that quick sketch, and then I'll usually move directly into Blender, where I do most of my 3D work. Actually, not most, all of my 3D work.
But you still do the level design in Unity, not in Blender, or do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do the level design in Unity. For this particular game, I've actually done some, if not most, of the visual development of each level in Blender. So I've taken a screenshot of the level as I've set it up in Unity, and then I've imposed that into Blender and used Blender to, and then just made all the assets, all the individual assets in Blender. I don't know if it's the best way of doing it, or if it's even a way that I would recommend somebody else does it. But it worked for this particular project because it allowed for me to work with each individual level more as an illustration than as single assets put in the game.
Yeah, maybe it works if you have a good feel of what you want to create, and if you can imagine how it will look when it's done, because obviously the look will drastically change when you bring it over from Blender into Unity and put some lighting on. And then for the lighting part, I imagine you probably just try, because I mean you can change stuff really quick in Unity.
Lighting in Unity is full trial and error.
Yeah.
I try something, and if it doesn't work, then I try something else. Actually, lighting has been one of the biggest problems I've had in Chainbroke.
Do you actually do light baking for your game, or do you just use real-time lights?
All of the lights so far are real time.
Okay.
I've considered putting in some light baking. I think there's definitely something to be said for it.
Definitely. Yeah.
But for this particular game, there just isn't enough. There just isn't enough detail in anything I'm doing that it really warrants light baking.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think light baking makes every light scene look more realistic, but the problem with it is that you run into a lot of technical problems, and doing a good light bake is like a science in itself, really. It's really hard.
I think it's one of those headaches that I decided pretty early on that I just wasn't gonna.
Yeah, I completely understand
give
that. I probably would have done the same thing.
But I mean, one
And
of the reasons I've given myself like
yeah,
4 months from beta to release is to try and figure out how do I make the game run better?
yeah,
Is light baking something I want? Like, there's a lot of questions that still are a big part of the game.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay.
All right.
I think that were all of my questions. Do you have all? Do you have some questions remaining?
No, I think I'm good.
Cool. Then let's give our viewers a couple more minutes so they can ask a question if they want, and then I think we're good.
Sure.
Yeah. Whew. Well, quite a good talk.
Yeah. Almost an hour and a half.
Oh, not bad. I streamed for 2 hours this morning.
Oh, wow.
And I chose a time where nobody was watching on purpose because it was my first stream. Yeah.
This is my first stream ever.
Mm.
I might stream later. I used to do a lot of speed paints. That was sort of a big thing on my channel for a while when I was working on a different game.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really got. The problem is I think I get self-conscious about my drawing ability.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I probably know more and am able to give more information when it comes to actual development of a title relative to, just showing the visuality of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think speed painting and concept art can be misleading as to what video game development actually is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Especially,
you
sorry.
can get a job as a concept artist in the games industry, no problem if you're skilled enough. But there are a lot of people who want to do this. And also, if you want to make an entire game, then concept art is a really small portion of it. And another problem with concept art, if you're a small developer, is just you can never make it look like in your artwork. It will just look different. Yeah.
I think I have one friend who's what's it called? A professional concept artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not being paid a lot to do it, firstly. And secondly, it does mean that, you think you're just going to be doing dragons and like super cool mech looking things, but he works on all sorts of different games.
Mm-hmm.
Not just games, TV shows or, box art for toys,
Mm-hmm.
and all this stuff. And sometimes he'll have worked with, one dumb piece of toy for a 3-year-old for like
Okay.
like a week, and he'll be just up to his eyeballs in cutesy bubblegum pink something that he has no real interest in.
Yeah.
But this is his area. This is what he
Yeah,
does.
sure. Okay, there's a question. Which kind of game do you play?
Myself?
Yeah, I can answer the question as well, but let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I tend to go narrative in my experiences. I really like puzzle games.
Mhm.
I think we're not seeing that many puzzle games. The last really good one I played, I think, was I never played The Witness, but I did play the Stanley Parable.
Oh, it's a really
It's
good game,
called
yes.
the something paradox, and it sounds like the Stanley Parable. And I always call it the Stanley Parable, but that is not what it's called. Even though the Stanley Parable
Yeah,
is
the
really,
Stanley Parable is also pretty good.
um,
Yeah, I also know a pretty cool puzzle game that I really like. But what was the name of that? I'm also really bad at remembering stuff. The Talos Principle. I really
that's the
liked.
one I was talking
Ah,
about.
you
Yeah.
were talking about the same one. Yes, it
That was
wasn't.
really, really good.
I love that game. I need to play it again. The Talos Principle. Awesome.
But with puzzle games, you need to give it a lot of times between playthroughs, so you
Mhm.
ostensibly forget
Yeah, that's true.
what the
Uh,
solution was.
But I also really like speedrunning puzzle games. I think one of the really fun parts about playing the Talos Principle was that I felt like I could rush through some of the puzzles really quickly. Obviously not all of them because some of them were really hard, but having a really complex puzzle and then solving it just in a couple of minutes and feeling really smart about it was one of the best feelings I ever got in playing puzzle games, I guess, or in playing video games. So I really like that. It has really good puzzle design. Absolutely.
The good thing about puzzle games is it when done right, it ends up making you feel really smart and really like accomplished. But it's not a market we see a lot of developers go into. I also really like narrative experiences. I used to be very, very into Telltale games, but that has sort of gone away as of late. I don't think that what they're doing recently is as interesting as I think the first couple of seasons of The Walking Dead were great, but what they're doing now just doesn't really do much for me. As I said, I just played Night in the Woods, which I really enjoyed. And last year, I really
is that a
enjoyed.
puzzle game or a horror
It's more of a
stealth?
narrative experience, I'd
Okay.
say. There are definitely puzzles in it, but nothing that's going to be a mind teaser.
Okay, and then just to go back to the puzzle games for 1 second, have you played Professor Layton?
I know of it, but I haven't played it.
I haven't played it because I don't have a console to play it on, but I borrowed it from a friend and I played a couple of levels and I think I liked it because there were a lot of different puzzles. But yeah, I don't know if I can tell you all that much about it. Just was another question from the stream chat, so I wanted to ask. Yeah, I played a couple of levels from Professor Layton, but I didn't feel like playing through it completely. No. But I guess it's kind of nice mix between narrative and puzzle game. So do you prefer games that combine the two, narrative and puzzle elements?
I know very few games that only do one.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Mostly puzzle games seem to be narratively focused, which is also probably why I like them.
That's
Portal is one that was very narrative.
Yeah, that's true. The Talos Principle as well was also quite narratively driven.
Talos Principle has a lot of narration too.
Yeah.
They seem to go hand in hand, and I think when you're focusing on narration, puzzles allow for the player to be an active part in the story. I think a lot of what happens is, it goes with a lot of games, even indies. It goes story, 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 then action, 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 then back to story, story, story. I like games that put me into the main action of the experience as quickly as possible and make me an agent in the experience. And I think the reason why I love puzzle games is they do that. They tend to have you as the driving force of the story.
But isn't that the case for most games? I think action games do that as well.
Games seem to. I'm not a big fan of the cutscene.
Yeah, that's true.
I can put my controller down now.
Yeah, that's
like a video game.
Yeah. Yes, me too. I'm playing games for the mechanics, for the gameplay. I'm very mechanics and gameplay driven, and I guess that's also why I like a lot of puzzle games, because you have I like puzzle games because they make me feel smart. Let's put it that way.
Another genre that's sort of that, but making a bit of a comeback too, that I really like is survival horror. I'm a huge fan of Amnesia or Soma, anything by that whole studio. Anything that goes really dark, I usually really like. The newest Resident Evil, I really enjoyed.
That looked really cool, yeah.
And I'll probably also see in my own game. I enjoy it when things go really dark. Like that's some of my favorite stuff. Which also then is representative of the type of work I do. Sometimes I even have to pull some. I never go like super dark, but I do tend to go really weird with some of my experiences that can be off to people. So it always has to be a balance. But I really like survival horror. That's some of the best.
Yeah. I see. Besides puzzle games, I also really like strategy games, obviously. So I play quite a bit of StarCraft and some tower defense games and stuff like that. Couple of indie games. And yeah, actually, have you played Braid? That's also a really good puzzle game.
I haven't played. I know of Braid, but I haven't actually played it.
It's a good puzzle game, but it's not dark. It's very nice and friendly. But other than, I can still recommend it. It's a really good puzzle game. Have a look if you want.
Sure. But I think that might be it for questions. No?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. Should we maybe call this a stream then?
Sure. Or we could just sit around a little longer and stare at the camera awkwardly. That would be fun as well.
So, yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, sure. If we have some more stuff to talk about, we can do this again. But
yeah,
we'll have to get some new ideas and yeah. Let's see.
I was just gonna suggest the same thing. But yeah, I'll see you around definitely.
Okay, so where's actually the button where I end the stream? Ah, here it is.
I have no idea.
Okay, so bye bye.
I'm gonna stick around until you end the stream. How about
exactly.
that?
So bye viewers. Nice that you were there. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Cool. Bye.